I was praying, like I said, hours. I was spending hours at the field. I didn't know anything about wrestling.
It's such a massive shift. It's unreal.
Yeah,
you went from growing up like basically in the hood to unreal. Right. Unreal.
Grandfather's in prison now. Time flies. I'm 13 years old. At this point in my life, I'm running with Gangsta Disciple Nation, GDN. Also, some people use BGD interchangeably. In Seattle was separate, but Black Gangsta Disciple was
These
all,
local...
really. It was one of the local gangs where I'm from. It was always trying to be a part of something greater than myself, because I felt like I belonged to something greater than myself. If I could take you to a particular figure, we'll say Tupac Shakur. You look at him before death row, and you look at him after death row. Completely different guy. Right, and the amount of records he's able to sell, and the success that he skyrocketed to, which unfortunately, because of the way the content and what it was, led to the end of his life. There was a movie years ago that I'm gonna reference.
Sure.
I don't recommend anybody watching the movie, but there was a movie called Boys in the Hood. All right.
Yeah.
Boys in the Hood was starring, Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., whatever the case is. Yeah, of course. All right. Classic movie from the 90s. Eh?
Very classic.
So there's a certain point where there's a discussion of God going on in a car at one of the parties or something like that, and Ice Cube, who was Doughboy in the movie, is saying that he was having a whole discussion with this young lady, saying that God can't be a girl, because if she was a girl, then there'd be no wars or anything like that, because that ain't in the girl's nature. Whatever. He was having all this whole conversation about how he was philosophizing the nature of God based on his own understanding.
Okay, guys, welcome to the podcast. Amazing honor to be here today with Nissim Black.
Nice to be with you also, brother.
It was a long-anticipated interview. Last time we saw Nissim was, I think, a few months ago in Crown Heights. It was quick and brief, but obviously I had Nissim in my heart ever since. I think that Nissim is a very special person, not only through his music and through the inspirational messages online, but I really wanted to take the chance to make this podcast to really get to know you better. And not just for myself, for the world as a whole, because I feel like you have so much to share. Obviously, living in Israel, going through a conversion process, I want everything to come out and really for people to get to know you better. The real you and what makes you you. So I guess to start, where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Seattle, Washington. Born and raised there. And I was, regular inner city kid, grew up seeing a lot of violence, a lot of things of that nature. Joined gangs very early, running around with the wrong people. So it's just a part of growing up in that world. Not everybody per se. What was unique, I think, for me was that I had my mother, but I also had a stepfather that I grew up with, who I called my dad. I mean, technically he was a stepfather.
Of course.
But I also had a relationship with my biological father also too. And that is a very, very strong component, because growing up where I come from, at least in our neighborhoods, you don't usually see that. Usually one guy is being raised by either the parent, the single parent mother usually, or grandparent a lot of times. So it was important for me, even at the times I was being a knucklehead as a kid or whatever, to always have that father figure was very, very important for me also.
For anybody?
For anybody.
Yeah.
For anybody. No matter where you came from, it's very, very important.
How many siblings did you have?
So I had one sister who was in the house with me, who was my mother, but on my father's side, I had 5 other siblings. Yeah.
Wow. And where'd you fall into the mix?
So so by my father, I'm a middle child. By my mother, I'm the oldest. So I got both those complexes, what I'm saying? Being the middle child and also being the older brother. But yeah.
And your family, what religion?
So faith played a very, very interesting role.
Yeah, please tell us.
It's very hard to describe, because I was always a very, very spiritual kid, spiritually intuitive, I guess that's the word. However, my grandfather, he came to live with us between 8, 9, somewhere around there. He had spent most of his time in prison. My grandfather, I think originally growing up was a Christian, but I don't know at what point in his life that he was in prison. At some point he converted to Islam, which is not unusual, but I think what is less usual is for people to convert to Islam in prison and become a Sunni. He was Sunni. He didn't become like a black Muslim like Farrakhan or anything like that, or what you would call Nation of Islam or whatever. And he really took it on. He learned the Arabic, learned the,
Wow.
all of that. So when he came to live with us, he taught me Arabic. I went with him to the mosque on Fridays. I prayed with him 5 times a day. He was in the house. He didn't have to pull me to do it because obviously I just didn't have so much religious activity at all in my life at that time. So
How old were
it was
you?
a time, 8 or 9, somewhere around there.
And that was the first time that religion was introduced to you?
Yeah, that was the first time religion in its organized way. People would get, because my house was really a trafficking house, honestly.
What does that mean?
Meaning that drugs were being sold in and out of my house.
Wow.
We were battle ran by the FBI around the same year, right before my grandfather came to live with us. We were already battle ran. I woke up to FBI agents all over the place, and I remember a officer getting me dressed, sending me up to school. I was startled. Everybody in my house was in handcuffs when I left.
Wow.
So I didn't know if anybody was going to be back or whatever was going to be there when I got home.
What was that like as a child?
Startling. I mean, I remember that day so clear, like it was yesterday,
Did you feel very alone?
I did feel very alone. When I got to school, I didn't even know how to process what had just happened, you know what I mean?
Of course.
It was just sort of like, I don't know if anybody's going to be home when I got home. I didn't, and I guess at some point my mother may have made contact with the school and she was still at least home, but everybody else that was in my house was not there, and so having moments like that wasn't unusual. You have to understand, coming in, and we'll get back to the religious piece, but coming in from school, I would walk in to my living room and there'd be kilos of dope on the table. You know what I'm saying? The white stuff. Mm-hmm. Garbage bags full of marijuana. I'm talking about, I saw this, and I think the biggest thing was for my parents was that they prided themselves on not hiding anything from me. But at the same time, it was never in their intention that I would take on this type of lifestyle. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they weren't hiding or shielding or anything. And they were very young also, too. My mother, I think she had me when she was 18 also. So she was very young. And I always say, I grew up with my parents. They say it also. I grew up with them. As they were growing, I was getting older also because they were young parents. And so because of that, seeing things over and over again will cause you to some degree normalize these things. You'd be less sensitive to the things that's happening. So you have to realize I was in a place where I thought that was just the way the world functions. This is how we all live.
Thought it was normal, yeah.
That's normal. So by the time we were battle ram, whatever, by the FBI, I remember feeling very, very alone, whatever. And I came back home. My mother was there, and okay, add that into the drawer. You know what I mean? Grandfather comes, teaches me Islam. I prayed with him, like I said, 5 times a day or whatever. And unfortunately, my grandfather, I want to say I was 9 when this happened, because what I'm thinking about now is my grandfather, the next year, he went to prison. So I was already 10. Mm-hmm. How do I time everything out? Because I know it was around 10, 11 when Tupac got killed. So I remember my grandfather, he had no connection. I'm just saying he ended up in prison around the same time. That's I'm always dating everything. I remember when Tupac was killed. So, which also sort of took that little bit of some type of structure, but the I guess the thirst for spirituality was still there.
Always.
Yeah, always. I don't know why I was like that as a kid, but I was always very interested in that. Years before my grandfather was in prison, he sent they used to have for inmates that they would send out gifts for grandkids, for kids or whatever. And so they didn't have anything Muslim, so they sent out, what did he send me that year? He sent me a DVD of the prayer of Yabetz. The tefillah of Yabetz was from Tanakh, Very, very famous tefillah. For anybody who's a Baki in Nach, they know about this tefillah. In the Christian world, it's very, very big, and I think it was a Christian organization put it out. But it was about the prayer of Yabetz, and I remember, watching this thing over and over and over again. That's why I always say the initial love I had for Eretz Yisrael came from that, and I had this longing for this short documentary of this person crying out to God and praying, and I think it started from there. I think that's where it really started.
Was there any involvement in Christianity, or was it just Islam?
So Christianity was before I became a very, very strong Christian, but up in that point in my life, I had one aunt who would come sometimes pick me up for Sunday school and different things like that. but it was very, very rare that happened. And, you know, I obviously wasn't in the church by the time the sermon started. I was outside playing with the rest of the kids, and I'd be up there in Sunday school and really not paying attention to anything. Anytime you had to have me sit down and like try to listen to a class, I still don't do classes. So I didn't really pay attention so much, but that was very, very rare that I would go every once in a while. And then, you know, Easter Sunday, you know, sometimes every once in a while I would go, every other year or something, but it wasn't like a family thing where we went to church on. It wasn't, I didn't really have so much of a kesher. So what happened is grandfather's in prison now. Time flies. I'm 13 years old, and at this point in my life, I'm running with Gangsta Disciple Nation, GDN. Also, you know, some people use BGD interchangeably. In Seattle was separate, but Black Gangsta Disciple was
These
all, you know,
local...
really. It was one of the local gangs where I'm from.
Right.
And so the more and more I started, you know, branching out to being more, you know, affiliated with them, I was getting myself in a lot of trouble, you know. My cousin used to get me in trouble, just being in the wrong place at the wrong time and wanting to always, everything stemmed from this. And I'll tell you, this is what it is. It was always trying to be a part of something greater than myself. Right? Because I felt like I belonged to something greater than myself. It was that chisaron that a lot of these guys I think maybe have to some degree, but that was something I always felt like. I always felt this longing to be a part of something else. And something that was bigger than me, a unit, something that felt like I had a family outside of my family, and that's what really led me to that, feeling like that as a kid. And although my cousin, he didn't have a father at home, and he really, the streets really raised him, I sort of envied that brotherhood he had with people. You know, seeing that as a kid, I really sort of like envied, like he has like guys that are really looking out for him and that. So that's what I think draws a lot of people to these gangs, right?
Do you feel like a lot of your friends in the gangs felt the same way?
Somewhat. I think there was somewhat of a thought that
like a lack of mentorship,
a lack of mentorship. You just don't have leadership really. Warmth. In that community, right? You know, like so what happens is you come to idolize the people who are making moves, who are the OGs, who are the people, like, because that's what you have to look up to. And then when we look, you know, I don't want to go there yet, but we could go there at some point when we look at the entertainment, especially for young black kids. You know, I've seen a lot of these young Jewish kids, they like all these new rappers and all that other stuff like that. It's going to have a different effect on the young black kid who's coming from these same neighborhoods, because when they see the person, they see themselves. You understand what I mean?
100%.
Young Jewish kid, he doesn't see himself. He sees, you know, little whatever his name is. Most of these guys are little something,
Pop
young
Smoke,
something.
whatever.
Yeah, no, whatever, Pop Smoke. Whatever the case is, they see these guys and they go like, wow, that guy's an entertainer. The young black kid says, no, that's me. You understand what I mean?
That's what I want to be.
That's not even what I want to be. That's all I could be. You understand what I'm saying? That's the way they see it, because that is idolized as success. This is the success that you can have, you know, and your success doesn't even have to be legal success. You could be so-and-so from the hood and have a power position and all that other stuff, but that's still called success.
It sounds just very misleading and confusing. It's like not understanding what life is all about. It's just watching people have money and successful and saying that's what I'm here for.
Right.
It's a lack of information.
It's a lack of information. It's a lack of understanding oneself. It's deep if you want to know who's to blame. The truth is, you know, when you look at this, there was a movie years ago that I'm gonna reference.
Sure.
I don't recommend anybody watching the movie, but there was a movie called Boys in the Hood. All right.
Yeah.
Boys in the Hood was starring, you know, Ice Cube, Cuba Gooding Jr., whatever the case is. Yeah, of course. All right. Classic movie from the 90s. Eh?
Very classic.
So there's a certain point, and I'm gonna give it to you without the foul language, where there's a discussion of God going on in a car at one of the parties or something like that, and Ice Cube, who was Doughboy in the movie, is saying that, you know, he was having a whole discussion with this young lady saying that, God can't be a girl, because if she was a girl, then there'd be no wars or anything like that, because that ain't in a girl's nature. Whatever. He was having all this this whole conversation about how he was philosophizing, the nature of God based on his his own understanding. I think the issue is that, and another part of the discussion I have to bring up, this is the most important part, was that it was brought up somewhere. I think it was in that same scene. Could have been a different part in the movie. But he said also that, we didn't bring all the drugs into our community. What black people own boats and all this other stuff that's able to communicate with Cuba. We didn't own boats. We didn't own ships. We didn't own that. So how does it that these things are in our community? How's there, a liquor store on every corner, or a gun shop, whatever the case is,
government
that are in it? So technically, the truth is that these things happen on the outside. There was at one point, this is something that's being discussed a lot right now, is that in music right now, especially, let's say, hip-hop, there was a shift when hip-hop was more political, was more educational, or even more stom about fun or whatever, but you would have never heard, or more so, I would say, people crying to get out, of the neighborhoods and the life that they were in, to where there was this major shift in hip-hop at some point. After NWA, Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Eazy, all these guys come out. And then that later on becomes a status quo. We watch that. If I could take you to a particular figure, say Tupac Shakur. You look at him before death row, and you look at him after death row. Completely different guy, right? And the amount of records he's able to sell, and the success that he skyrocketed to, which unfortunately, because of the way the content and what it was, led to the end of his life.
Me and Tupac have the same birthday.
Oh, really?
June
Okay,
16.
so it's June 16. Okay, so what you see is that itself somehow starts to become the status quo of what music is, and what was there before is sort of like, not only does it fade to the back, but it's almost like you can't get a deal. Nobody's checking for you anymore if you're talking anything positive or anything like that, and they ask you what the shift. So there's a lot of different rumors going around right now. And some of them are more credible than others, but one of the things is that there was obviously a meeting of the minds at some point. There was one guy who claims he was there at the time this meeting took place.
The higher-ups.
Yeah, the higher-ups, where they understood that if they had stock also in the prison, right, it was presented to them, you have stock in the prison, right, you already have the artists, and it's not unusual for labels to double dip. I'll tell you another way it works now, that, if you're signing these acts, you don't lose. If you can present violence and the idea of making illegal money and drugs and all this stuff through the music, right? These guys end up incarcerated. You don't lose any money. You're making money. Prisons are owned privately, right? So you have a stock in the prisons. This is one of the ideas that's been floating around. But we see that that's not unusual for these companies to do that, because, right, when we come to looking at things right now, right, what happened? The industry goes into a frenzy. Like, nobody knows what to do, because now you're able to download people's music for free. Rhapsody goes crazy, Napster, right? And so that gave birth to these streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, and whatever. And Spotify, which is probably the biggest of the labels, also have a look at that also too. Specifically, Sony and Universal, right, own stakes in that. So not only are they getting from the artists, they're also getting on the other end of the streaming platform as well. So it's like capital. We don't lose, right? Trying to find ways to some degree monopolize where we don't lose. And so what happens is, whenever you have gatekeepers like that, there's for sure, what nobody can argue is that there's an interest outside of the best interests for these kids coming from this inner city or black community, whatever the case is, right? The question is, where is it coming from? Who knows, right? So you don't know my theory is?
Please.
This may get me in trouble, but you said you want the truth, right?
Only the truth.
What was the biggest problem with what Kanye said that made us all upset, myself included, right?
It's that he said that the Jewish people have something that he wants.
Right.
Whether you want to say it was trying to make us look bad or not. It was a jealousy
He
almost.
came out at this, right? We all recently, all of them, I'm saying self-included, right? I grew up on Kanye. That was one of my favorite guys. Candace also, right? Totally like disregard. What are they trying to say that we've been trying to say, that Rabbanim have been trying to say, and different things like that? And this is not to alienate, but I'm not even going to say it's particular people, but I'm going to say the energy of Erev Rav is the same Erev Rav that's been destroying the Klal Yisrael also. You understand what I'm saying?
They don't have the Torah that we have.
Exactly. It's not just the fact that they have the Torah. Some people could take Torah and they'll flip it and manipulate it. It's not that the people in these high ups don't have. There's Talmud classes. There's all different type of things.
Yeah, but that's what makes us together.
Exactly.
And that's what he was lacking in his community, or felt.
He felt that was what was lacking. But when he lashed out,
how come the Jews help each other and the black people don't? Like, why is it always,
why is it always
taking away from each other?
But there was something deeper than what he was trying to get out. Because his first thing was DEFCON 3. Nobody understood. And then later on, he admits that there's some type of jealousy there. But there's another aspect of where, unfortunately, a lot of times in these positions of power, what happens is you see Yiddish face. That's what happens, right? So when these guys come out in the industry, they look up and they go, "Who's this exec that is?" There's a famous interview right now. Hashem Yirachem. There was a famous interview. Lior Cohen was on the Breakfast Club, and Lior Cohen, obviously, businessman, Def Jam Records which was actually started by Russell Simmons. He's going on and on about how bad the drugs are in the community, how much is being presented in the streets, and on the effect that it's having on society. And he didn't let up on it. He was very, very, as a matter of fact, about this thing. So Charlemagne, the G, that's what I say, I'm not going to call him by what he calls himself. So he says over to the guy, he says, "Why you keep signing these acts? Why you keep signing people that this is all they're promoting?" He says, "Oh, well, I got to feed my family." You understand the contradiction there? So I think what happens is a lot of times is that
it's a compromise of value.
It's compromising value. And this is what I'm saying over here, is that we have to be able to separate, that which is bringing our energy into the world. Am Yisrael, Klal Yisrael is called to be Or Lagoim, to be called the light to the nations, right? We're here to be a light to the nations. So that means that the koach that we have is inevitably going to affect the world, no matter which way we use that energy, right?
Right.
So a lot of times we find ourselves in positions of power, right, that ultimately can cause us to use those energies for the wrong reason. I don't know if it's the position, or I don't know if it's the intention of the individual. I would imagine it's more so the intention of the individual. Why am I saying all this? Is because, and I have friends that are in the industry, love them to death, and they're good people. But that's what we run into. That's what brings a conflict right now, what we're seeing right now in entertainment, especially amongst black artists in the Jewish community and different things like that, is that sometimes you look up and you find yourself in a position where it's like, okay, well, who keeps presenting these things back into the black community that this is the only way that I could be? Who owns all the companies? Who owns all that? And they're looking and they're saying, oh, it's Yidden. It's Jews, right? So this is where you're seeing a lot of this happen.
So we almost can't blame them for thinking those things.
Right. So then you go so now on my one end, I got to defend it because this is Klal Yisrael. I'm 100%. I'm a Yid before I'm black. Just like I will hope that there's a which is not a color, right? Just the same way that a Christian, I will hope that a Christian who believes very strongly in their faith, that first your faith is important to you before your skin color. Most people don't hold like this, right? Or Arab, you're Muslim before you're an Arab, right? And the case is by Yid, we're Yid before whatever our color is, all right? So my natural inclination is going to be like, hold on, this is. But then when you start to listen to why they're saying that, they don't have the lushan to distinguish between that person like we do. We know the difference between a bin Torah and a person who's not, right? We know the difference of what type of behaviors may come out of it. Doesn't change the Nakuda. We don't know who Badafka is Erev Rav and who's not. But we can see characteristics of things that are mamish like destroying, you know what I'm saying, destructive, and at the face of it we see that, oh, it's a Yid. George Soros, this one Yid I don't mind not talking about. This guy is a complete, you understand, I don't even want to say anything, but I don't mean to take your thing political, but I'm just saying, but we see that there could be these type of powers and energies in the world coming from people that mamash disrupt. So I always tell people, the same people that same energy, that same entity of that which caused Klal Yisrael to worship a golden calf is the same one that's being responsible for the destruction of the society, right? Why is society going down? What's spearheading that? So I think that that's the same energy. It's an Erev energy. Not particularly germane to whether a person's a Yid or not, obviously. That could be a person who's not Jewish. But the idea is that these same energies are the same things that have been putting, I think, stumbling blocks between people in that community, if you're asking me. And you did. So,
interestingly enough, if you look at the human being, when we're born very inferior, and we grow up with this insecurity that never leaves.
Right.
And it's not, I don't think it pertains to Jewish or not, but as a person grows up, young adult, and throughout their life, through development, there's this insecurity of like, I have this emptiness inside of me and I need to fill the void. So people go to power, money, control, different ways. But something I learned recently, which what the Ramchal writes, is that void needs to be filled with emunah, faith, and bitachon, confidence in Hashem.
Right.
Because when you're able to fill yourself with with what needs to be filled, it requires a lot of humility.
Right.
Because if a person is able to surrender and say Hashem is really the one God is really the one that's taking care of me and filling up everything, then suddenly the insecurity becomes a blessing.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you look at what you're saying in the industry, all these people, the Jewish owners, what are they in essence? They're running away from the truth.
Right.
They're running away from their responsibility in this world. And really, they're small, low self-esteem.
Listen, I don't know the Nakuda.
As big as they look, as small as they are.
I like I said, it's the energy, but I definitely don't know what the driving force is. But I know that
it's Sitra Achra.
Yeah, mamash. Yeah. Apart from that, I'm saying I just don't know at what point this switch turns on in the person. I'm not there, right? So I can't empathize with it. I just see the behaviors of it. And so when you ask me why that young black kid thinks he can't do anything else, because everybody that looks like him, first he's got a construct in his mind already that I need to, the idea of who I am is based off my color, right? So already that's the first thing for him, is that the color of my skin determines who I am as an individual and as a person. And then the next part of that leads to this world of now only things that fit within that idea of that color and that construct. That ultimately is telling me where I can go and how far I can navigate in life, right?
It's a limitation.
It's a limitation. Like growing up, I was working for a company, very, very like woke company, right? I was working for this company, and I remember for a lot of the trainings had nothing to do with the actual field of work I was in, but it was like preserving the ideology of the company was so important that we have to do these workshops. And so what they keep on telling me over there is how oppressed I was because I was black, and how I was never gonna, and I was thinking, this is so destructive, because the truth is, if I really listened to these guys, then I really would think I have no hope. You know what I'm saying? I really think I have no hope, and I think perpetuating that has, led to big downfall. I'm sorry we pivoted away from where we're going, but we're talking about me, but we're talking about what's going on in society.
It's all good. So, anyways, to go back to you for a second, so go more into your teenage adult. How'd you get into music? Where'd this, thirst for religion, where did it take you?
So what happened is they actually came together. I was into music very much so. I should probably mention both my mother and my father were both rappers. So in the early 80s, they actually pioneered hip hop in Seattle. I don't think I knew that till I was a little bit, like I was at least almost a preteen or something like that, But my love for music was from the time I was born. I had it. I used to do Michael Jackson moves with a dirty diaper, at 3 years old. And at least I always say, until I was 8 years old, I was convinced that I was Michael Jackson. And I always say, Baruch Hashem, until 8 years old, I'm happy I wasn't hanging out with Michael Jackson, you understand? But anyway, but the truth is, I loved music. And so by the time I was 13, I recorded my first song with the producer, Vitamin D. And also that same year, I can't believe I'll ever forget this, my uncle, RC, who was also a producer, he recorded with me that same year. So I already had like 3 professional done songs, recorded, and feeling like, now I'm starting my career. My parents obviously seeing that I was very much so invested in it.
What type of music were you producing?
I was doing rap, but it was gangster. It was definitely gangster rap.
That's okay.
But that's where I started. That's how I started. That's what was available to me, at least at the time.
No, of course.
And so that same year, a good friend of mine, Ramis, but they call him Fatal. That was his street name. Fatal was also a rapper. For him, I don't think he had the same basic opportunities I had, but he was really nice rapper. When I mean nice, he was really good. And so he had found his outlet at the Union Gospel Mission. And Fatal, who was like a brother to me, really, was always conflicted. One of those really bright, super bright guys, right? But that street life really had a hold on him. You know what I mean? And so for him, this was a great place for us both to come to sort of chill out and get away from the world. But he brought me into this hip hop program that I went to, and I think I took more to the faith part because it was a Christian organization than he did at the time. He had somewhat of more of a foundation in that because his mother, I think, was also evangelist as well. Right. So he was sort of like the preacher's kid, so to speak, or whatever. So he had a little bit more rebelliousness than I did. So I kind of took to, and this place became like my safe haven, my second home, really. And still to this day, this is why I'm big on Karas Tov. Most people, when they leave a religion, because I was a staunch Christian.
What?
I was a staunch Christian. I was frum. I was a frum Christian, right, in my teenage years, and Bible thumper, as you would call it. And what's interesting is, I was steigen. I'm steigen, right? So what happens is, this is very interesting. I became very, very religious, and because that place helped me, even though I'm a Yid today, and obviously don't believe in Christianity as my faith, I still very much have a Karas Tov. So I'm not running out. Most people, when they leave a faith, they start downing the last one that they went through. Those people came into my life as such a critical place. It saved my life. I was really at that point. I was expelled from the Seattle School District. I was running with all the wrong people, and there's at a pivotal point. So I have a Karas Tov to those people in the organization. Doesn't mean I have to stay a Christian, but that was the point of my life. So this is why when we have to be cautious sometimes on how you don't have to accept other people's faith as our truth, but some way, the way that we deal with people, we have to understand, humans are humans. Some of these people are very, very good people.
No question about it.
That was a very, very impactful time for me because, like I said, it kept me out of the streets, whatever, and I got to write and create, became very, very good friends with the people that were there, and they took me to a camp. The next year, I was there that whole entire year. The next year, I went to a camp with them, and that's when I officially converted to Christianity. And that turned me into a major. I was 14, I think, when that happened.
Did you identify with Islam or no? Before?
Up until that point, yeah. I was a Muslim.
Wow.
And what's so interesting is at 13 years old was that breaking point for me. It's a bar mitzvah age.
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
At 13 years old was that point where I realized that I also wanted to be a gangster. I also wanted to know God. I was having all these chemical imbalances all at the same time, right? I wanted to take my rap career seriously, and because of that led me to do all those things full force. I went back. I had an uncle who was also Muslim. My grandfather was still in prison this time, so I became even more engrossed in Islam at this time. And ironically or not, a few years before this, my father, I didn't grow up in the house, but my biological father had went to seminary and became a Christian. He went through prison and really changed his life, did a major 180, changed his life. Became now today he's a professor and doctor in theology, whatever. And he at that point wanted to, continue with me a little bit because he learned obviously a lot in apologetics and whatever. So about my Islam that I was getting into even more so at that point. So we had a long conversation. And so all that happened right around the time I went to this camp. I had this crazy experience. So now I come back from that camp experience and I had really a bracha from Hashem that I had the opportunity to go back to regular school, right? So I think I was maybe 12, almost 13 when I got kicked out of the schools. So by the time I was 14, they were allowing me to go back. I had 2 years in a non-public school system. So 14 years old, I'm ready to start high school, so I have a new lease on life. And that really was the beginning of me, like, at least starting to take those steps towards faith and establish myself and to some degree like identifying as a person of faith. Like, this is who I am.
So young. Wow.
I was very young, very, very young. I had 15 already. By 15, 16 years old, I used to lock myself in my room and talk to Hashem. Like, that was my thing.
What did it mean to you at that point?
I don't know why, but maybe, like I said, it could always go back. I haven't been thinking about this until recently. At what point did it start? And I remember watching this DVD, this prayer of Yabetz, right? So that was the first time I ever seen somebody like praying to God. It was like they reenacted it or something, but there was a whole documentary on this prayer, this tefillah, Jabez, how you say it in English. And I don't know, for whatever reason, through all the stories of the Bible, and obviously I had the New Testament or whatever at that time also, I connected the most to tefillah. So I would close myself in my room and I would be praying and talking to God, 15, 16 years old. And that was was my way of connecting. I was really, I was into it. I was really into it.
Very powerful.
Really into it. Yeah.
So you really saw you saw Islam, Christianity, and Judaism.
Right.
So did Judaism make the most sense?
So, this is a later point in life. What happened is, in Judaism, how I come to Judaism. So the story's been told a lot that, obviously I took a brief swing away from Christianity when I was offered a big contract at a record label to produce gangster rap. From that, I ended up putting out songs, becoming more popular. Didn't end up with the deal. I ended up losing my mother. She died of an overdose. That was very, very tough for me.
Sorry.
And that led to the next year getting into an altercation with another rapper. Just because of the type of music. Once you're in that type of environment, they're gonna test you eventually. Somebody's gonna see, And so he put out a song about me, some other rapper.
Like a diss?
Yeah, like a diss song, a diss track. And my boy Fatal, afterwards, after we get into the squabble outside the nightclub, my boy Fatal ran up there and out of his love for me, and obviously, just the way the streets work or whatever, he went up to try to...
He did something fatal.
Yeah, he did something. It would have been fatal. Thank God he was off that night. His target practice.
He sounds like a good guy.
He really is a good guy. Listen, guys, when they're in the streets, like this guy, he's a brilliant mind. Really, really is. But sometimes the streets have a hold of you.
Right.
And even though, if I seen him today, I would tell him also, and he knows in a second, his purpose is big. He's one of those guys. He had a big soul. I'm talking about, he's not normal. But anyway, he ends up going into custody after that, and he spent, I don't know, less than 2 years. I think he was in there after that. But the problem was initially that now they're going to come after me because they thought I sent him to kill him, And that put me in this place of odds. And what was so perfect and so awesome about this scenario that seemed like it was the worst thing in the world, right? And I have to remind myself all the time when I have, my moments of feeling like, Hashem, where are you, right? I was deeply in the place of wow, everything is about to end now. Because either I'm going to go kill this guy, right? And that's going to lead to probably me going to jail and, whatever, in some way, I'm going to lose my life from this, right? Either he's going to come after me, or I'm going to go take his life.
There's no way to consolidate?
So there was no way. What I had done, what I had done, because that was the way that the streets went. And things were very much heating up. It's part of the culture. So part of the way that things
horrible.
are. It is, because a lot of people get themselves in situations like that where they would want an alternative, but they don't. So, but my natural response to that was that I have muscle memory of that 15, 16-year-old praying inside of my room, right? I have that spiritual muscle memory. So I went go straight back to tefillah. I start crying to God, like, how did I get here? How did I get to that place? I was 20 years old when this happened.
20 years old.
And so I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way in the world I can, like, what am I going to do? This is not who I am. You know, I got off a contract and I started putting out gangster music again. But even before that, when I was that kid getting in trouble and whatever, I was never, like, really a violent guy. I got into fights and all that like that, whatever, but I was never a firecracker. You know, you have some guys like, they're just firecrackers, you know what I mean?
You call
I was never
gentle.
that guy. No, I was always still, even when I was in the streets. I was never like a guy, like, starting trouble or anything like that. Yeah. So even then, it was for me, like, you know, this place of me feeling like, wow, you know, how did I get myself into this place?
Right.
A few years ago, I was with a ministry. I was building orphanages in Mexico and all the other stuff like that. And I was leading Bible study groups and different things like that. And then all of a sudden, the shift to where it's like my whole entire world is flipped around. So what happened is I prayed. The short story is, me and that guy ended up talking. We had a conversation about it. He called me. And after it was put behind me, I said, I'm never going back to such a life. I can't. I didn't know what I was going to do. So I became just, you know, regular Christian. And I spent most of my time, there was a certain lack of trust that I had in the organization of religion, right? And organized religion. So I wouldn't go to church, right? It wasn't my thing. I'd much rather on Sundays spend time watching the Seahawks. So that was sort of what I did with my time. But at least throughout the day, I went back into this mode of praying like I was when I was a teenager. And now there's nobody else around me. So that naturally led to me picking up the Bible, reading it, thinking of having it. Because once you're in that place of where everything's pure ruchnius, right? I'm at this place where I'm davening to Hashem and I'm spending a lot of time with Him and I'm davening and I'm open at this point to know what the truth is, because I obviously at this point I felt enough to where I never been like that type of guy that could like fit in the box of the organized religion. At least that's what I thought, right? So up until that point, I didn't know really where I was going with anything. I had no idea. I didn't know I was going to go to Judaism, but I had a thought. So, you know, when I was younger, I had all these questions. Nobody else is around. I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood in Seward Park. I was inside there. I used to see Jews all the time.
Wow.
I didn't have
what type of Jews?
I didn't have any vendetta. Orthodox. I grew up in the Orthodox. In the neighborhood. That's where I was actually Magaya at, in the same neighborhood. So what happened was I'd seen my Jewish neighbors, didn't have so much, and the only time I had against the Jewish people really at that time was I didn't understand why people prefer to walk in the middle of the streets on Saturday instead of using the sidewalk. There's a sidewalk right there. Just go use it. You know what I'm saying? Why you come out the street? I'm riding my bike. You know what I'm saying?
You really
messing
didn't
on my
understand?
bike. I realized I didn't understand. I didn't know what Shabbos was, right?
I wonder what people think about it.
So, but other than that, Baruch Hashem, I didn't have anything, but I wanted to know why these different religions. So I got very, very invested in that. So I started ordering a few different books of the Christian Bible. I had the Quran, and I had a JPS Tanakh and a different type of Chumash. I don't even remember who the publisher of it was. I don't know if it was Jewish, but I had a Chumash that had Hebrew also, was supposed to be very true to it. And so I was spending, at this point, I got to a point where I was spending 8 hours every day going between all these different texts. And if I was to sum it up very easily about Yiddishkeit, there's many different things that were pushing me at this time. But it was something about studying Tanakh, especially eschatology, end-time studies, right? When you're studying about Mashiach, what's going to be, why is that the most important and the most fascinating thing to a Christian mind when they're reading the Old Testament is not Torah and halacha. They're not trying to get out of it. They're not trying to get hashkafa or whatever. They look to the Nevi'im because they're very interested in Mashiach. They're obsessed with it because for them Mashiach already came. But if they want to know anything about what's going to be in the future, they're going to think, like I need to be invested in that. So that's a natural progression for people who are
so interesting.
Open.
Why? It's so interesting.
It's crazy, right?
There's there's no foundation to it.
Yeah. Yes, it isn't foundation. Well, for the Christian mind, the foundation is Tanakh, right? That would be the foundation of their faith. But there's no foundation for. Okay, yeah, I don't want to go into to apologetics right now because we could go there. But the truth is that is the natural place where a person is a messianic world. They get very, very heavily invested into eschatology, end time studies, and looking at the Nevi'im and trying to decipher the truth from over there. What was interesting that I didn't make a full connection to, but the things that led up to it was coming across like pasuk in the verse in Zechariah that talks about the tens of the nation at the end days will come and grab the tzitzit or the helm, whatever, of the Jew and say, I want to go with you for I heard Hashem is with you. Saying in Yirmiyahu that the nations are going to come and say that, they're going to come to the Jewish people and say, we're coming to you, our fathers, they taught us lies and all these other things. So there were so many different things that I was reading, I was skimming through. I started to notice a lot of things also too, God being married to the backslider and different things like that. I think that's in Hosea that always is used in the church and thinking about that's the Christian, but no, this is Hashem talking to the Jewish people that even though they went from him. So now I'm starting to see that, hold on, the relationship shift was from God speaking to the church to God speaking actually to the Jewish people. It's used interchangeably inside the church, or much more so they
You notice this on your own?
Huh?
You notice
I noticed all this on my own. I didn't know anybody. I talked to Rabbi Tovia Singer a lot now because he's in apologetics. I didn't know he was here. But so we've had a couple interviews, but we talk. I call him, as often as I need to, whatever. We've had these conversations. But I told him, and I says, I was so connected you for so long. I was like his biggest enemy, and I couldn't take for him because Rabbi Tovia Singer's way was so cynical. Like sometimes the way that he comes off. So, in the beginning for me, Rabbi Michael Skoback from Jews for Judaism, who I actually met on my journey, was much easier for me to digest, right? It was a little more of a softer way. Rav Tovia was very, very cynical, and it was hard to listen to in the beginning because it's really challenging my faith. You understand what I'm saying? There's a lot of Christians man, this is overly challenging. So usually that leads to either you're open enough to where you're free, but you have this breakdown. So for me, I was going through all this on my own, and it was as if I was in this place of stripping layers off of Hashem, stripping more and more layers off of him, and that was the whole entire.
You mean coming
feeling.
closer?
Coming closer, and the more and more I was coming closer to Yiddishkeit.
What a process!
It was crazy. It was crazy. I was spending 3 days at a time fasting.
How come?
Because I wanted the truth, and the more and more you come to, once you're leaving a faith or something that you felt was very much so your emet, it was your truth, and you have to open yourself up to another one. You go into this place of sort of being resentful a little bit. I was a little upset with God. My wife was much more upset than I was at this point in our journey, but very upset.
You were married?
I was married. So me and my wife are high school sweethearts. So
wow.
We've been together since we were 16. Well, I was 16, she was 17. I like older women, but that's what happened. So we went on this whole entire journey together. But at the beginning, of course, she thought I was crazy. But at some point, we hit this turning point of us growing together, and just feeling man, Hashem, that's messed up. Why'd you tell us why did we have to not know all the things that we were coming to discover that?
And you lost your appetite.
Yeah, it made me. It wasn't so simple. That transition. But that, yes, the main thing for me that made Judaism stand superior was I saw the power of Hashem's word based upon what it says in the Nevi'im, right? So Jewish people have all this mention. I didn't know anything about the Holocaust now. I'm 20 years old at this time I started searching. I never heard of the Holocaust. Went to public school for most of my life, except for 2 years. I didn't know anything about it. Didn't know about the inquisitions, the pogroms, nothing, of course. No mention. I mean, Schindler's List was a movie, but if you just grow up and you just see it's a Hollywood movie, you just know it's a movie. And I wasn't really watching. That was my mom's stuff. I didn't really watch it.
Wow.
But I didn't know if it was like, based on a true story. Nothing. So what happened is, as I'm finding out about the plight, everything that the Jewish people went through, came across the quotes of Mark Twain and early writers that talked about Eretz Israel. And I seen all this, piecing all of this together, and I started to realize that, wow, Hashem's word is money in the bank. Right? All the way from, I'm going to scatter you amongst the nations, make you small in number, I'm going to cause the land to become desolate, it won't rain on the land, everything else that happened to the Jewish people is mamash happened. Klal Yisrael returned to Eretz Israel, right? And that I'm saying the pasuk mamash in Yechezkel 36, it talks about the vegetation, the growing of the plants. I know I was watching one time, somebody had made this connection. Many years ago, like I said, I was 20 years old, 21 years old, and I seen this, and I said, whoa, Hashem's word is money in the bank. We're in Eretz Israel today, right? You could go vegetation. So I was actually talking to Rav Tovi about this.
Unreal.
It's crazy. We don't realize how much of a prophetic time that we're living in right now. How much mamash living the time of the Nissim they talk about. So I said to Rabbi Tovi one time, we were talking, I said, listen, this has to be the Zman Agula. This has to be the time, because it says in Sefer Yechezkel, what's the proof is that the land gives forth its vegetation. When Hashem brings Klal Yisrael back to the land, that's how we know. Regardless of what happens, I don't want to get into politics between this Shita and that Shita about Eretz Yisrael, Medina, Nishta Medina, whatever the case is, doesn't matter. The way that we're supposed to know is Hashem gave us the Nevi'im. So we're watching, right? All of everything, right? The biggest oxymoron in the world is what? Is a Jewish atheist, right? The Jewish atheist is the biggest oxymoron. He's the biggest steerer to anything that could possibly exist. Why? Because the proof of Hashem is the Jewish people themselves. The whole entire integrity, all of eschatology, all the future, all the Nevi'im, everything they're saying is predicated on the existence of Jews, which should not be, according to Jewish history, right? If you're looking at, if you take out a calculator and somebody looks at this, but what's the logic? Logically, there should be no Jewish people. I always say we've had
no chance.
Beef with every single tyrant, you know what I'm saying, that you could possibly think of. We have one or two guys that are on that side, but most of the case, you don't have. So when you look at that, and you say that today, not only did Klal Yisrael come back, but not only is there vegetation and different things growing in the land, but mamash living in the time of the war. So it's very clear that this time, even we're in Eretz Yisrael, things are not perfect. We're fighting on the right, on the left, the religious, non-religious, whatever. How do we know this is mine? First off, most people don't study Tanakh. When they came back from the Anshe Knesset Agadolah, most people don't really realize. They say, oh, well, Ezra came back. It was taught. Ezra wasn't already there for many, many years. Nehemiah came back first. Not to say that Nehemiah wasn't a tzaddik, it was a tzaddik, but that's not, he didn't come to bring Torah. He came first to build up the land. And that's what happened. And because there were piguim, there were terrorist attacks from all the people, everybody that was around, they had to take up arms and build an army while they're building. So who built the Beis HaMikdash, the second Beis HaMikdash? People that were not frum. They were married to non-Jewish women. They were not keeping Shabbos. All of this is inside of the text. This is who came. Ezra came and brought Torah after they were already there laying the foundations of Yerushalayim. This was already happening, taking place. I'm telling you, I'm going through all of this, right? So I said, I'm looking at it today, and I said, we're dealing, essentially, history is just repeating itself. It's really the same thing. So I said to Rabbi Tovia Singer, I said, so this is the proof, this Pasuk alone is the proof that this is the Zman of Geula, that we're back because vegetation, everything's growing. He said to me, Nissim, you're right. He says, if you want to daven, you go to the Kotel. If you want to go to the holiest place to daven, go to go. He said, but if you want to come to Eretz Yisrael, and you want to see Hashem, you got to go to Machane Yehuda. All right? You have to see the fruits and the vegetation growing and everything. I don't hang out there. There's a lot of other things you can see in Machane Yehuda, but whatever the case is. But the truth is that it stands. And so these things, we don't realize that just from the Nevi'im. I didn't know anything about Torah Shabbal Peh yet. But from the Nevi'im itself, I was able to see so much proof in the words of Hashem that it was inevitable for me that, He was Hashem, and Klal Yisrael was his most prized possession. And nothing made me more jealous than for Hashem to keep saying a bunch of people who are not listening to him over and over again get to be the apple of his eye. What about me? I mess up also, I went in. So that was probably, all that together was the biggest things for me at that time.
When did you feel, when did you go from this, you could say, transformative period of this is the truth and I want to be a part of it? Because you could also acknowledge the truth and say I could be a righteous Noahide or Gentile.
Right.
Because it is a lot.
Right.
A lot of work.
It's only a lot of work.
I'm born a Jew, so maybe I don't understand as much. Like I'm used to, 13 bar mitzvah, tefillin, kosher, always vacations in certain places. Like it's just in my DNA.
Right.
But I envy that you chose this.
Right. So everything is a lot, and I'm seeing this in other fields of my life, work. And I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to give you an example. I remember once I was working with a producer who was in Tel Aviv, and secular guy, whatever, but he was doing some work. I met him through Gad Elbaz. Name's Oren Emanuel, very awesome producer.
Right.
And I remember going to a studio, and I was with Yosef, my brother-in-law, and we're looking at this guy's workflow and the stuff that he's doing. I would never spend the amount of time to learn everything that he did. And I also engineer, I know how to work in the studio, I'm a producer as well, but how all these different details of what he would do to get a song to sound the way they want, I would never spend that much time. Bittel's man, what are you doing? Why would you do that? I understand, I see the results of what you're doing, but I would just think of it looking that would be so much work, so much hours of my day. But the difference by him was, it wasn't something he had no choice, because there was a lot of things he could have cut corners on, but for him, he was fully invested in it. So it was never he had to, he gets to. And what happens for me, from a non-Jew becomes a Yid, it's I get to. That bar mitzvah boy, when he's putting on his tefillin, it's not now I have to put on tefillin. It's now I get to put on tefillin.
Unreal.
You understand what I'm saying?
Unreal.
So it's a different type of relationship, legamre.
I understand, but I don't.
You understand, but you don't, because you understand, you know when you're a bar mitzvah, right? You get to put on tefillin, you count them in, you think about all the benefits.
For me, it's to learn about tefillin now as an adult. Now I feel wow, I can't wait to put on.
Right.
I recently got a new pair of tefillin from a big Rosh Kollel in Yerushalayim. A person that never saw a smartphone.
Right.
Dips in the mikveh nonstop, learns Torah, a real kadosh person. And when I put on this new pair of tefillin, I don't want to take it off.
Right.
But I didn't feel that way as a kid.
You didn't? Okay, so I know some bar mitzvah boys that they're very excited to be able to put on the tefillin for the first time.
I don't even remember.
You don't remember that? Okay, so I could tell you as there's nothing. People that are Magaya, they understand this for sure. But being somewhere at a shul, I remember going through my process of
when did you start the process?
Huh?
When did you start?
I started the process when I was 24. Yeah.
And that's when you decided.
That's when we decided, but it wasn't.
You and your wife together.
Me and my wife together.
Wow.
But that breaking point, what you said, was when I knew it was more than just that. Was it was I get to, right? And the reason why it was I get to, because there was never no moment when it happened. It was from all that time of spending time with Hashem and to feeling and falling in love with Hashem, that you're looking already for the next thing to do, right? What's the next thing I could possibly do to enhance that relationship with Hashem?
Like you said, you were taking off the layers.
I was taking off the layers. I was praying, like I said, hours. I was spending hours at the field. I didn't know anything about wrestling.
It's such a massive shift. It's unreal.
Yeah.
You went from growing up basically in the hood to unreal.
Right.
Unreal.
But in the Panim, it's each person. I don't know. I'm also sensitive in the Neshama, so I was more sensitive to that call. I don't think people are not called. I think they just have sensitivity, and they may not be called to convert, but they're either called to be a Nochai, maybe called to be a Ben Adam, a good person that emits light into the world and not darkness.
How do you listen to the call?
So I don't. The question is, I don't know if there's a science on that. I know that me personally, I would say that I'm naturally sensitive. However, at that point for me, it was more so that call was always there, and maybe I was always running away from it. you know, because I tell you what, by the time this issue I had with this kid who, you know, was in that kill or be killed situation, all the way up until that point, I always knew that there was like some major purpose for my life. I felt that I had a godly mission in the world. I just felt like I was running from it.
You shied away from it.
Yeah, I just felt like I was running from it. Like,
that's very common.
Eventually, it's you know, feeling like I'm running from it. But if I was sat long enough to be able to listen to myself, I probably would have made half the decisions I made before. You know.
Wow.
But that's what happens with most people. But some people, I don't know how. Some people will hear, other people won't hear. I don't know what's close to my head. I don't know if you understand, but that was really it. Just being able to be sensitive to knowing. So
does the call still come now?
Absolutely.
Like in a different way,
it never ends. Never ends. A person, for me especially, because, you know, after many years became a Breslov chassid, whatever. Which really, the reason why I mention that is because Rabbi Nachman's very big on the Indian of Hitbodedut. He's Bodedus, right?
Yeah.
Is that people understand, like some people think like, wow, just tefillah, talking, either some people look at it and say, oh wow, you talk to yourself for that long, you know, whatever. So I know I'm talking to Hashem, and then other people look at it and say like, wow, you know, daven to Hashem about everything on everything, because in the end I want to get something from him, right? But Rav Nachman's revealed that his bodedus is the idea of get to a place of bittul, of complete nullification before Hashem, thereby which what happens when a person comes to a place of bittul, they come to a place of anivus. They become humble.
Humility. Yeah.
Right? And once they're humble, then now I can hear you, Hashem. But the moment I'm not humble and I'm running out and I'm on this rat race or whatever, the moment I don't get to a place of bittul, I don't have anivus, and so I'm all ego. And whatever I want to accomplish in the world, I'm going to go do because I want to go do it. And I'm going to do this. And I may think this about me. I see I have certain personalities. I see I have certain strengths. I see I have all these things.
Right.
And I'm going to use them to accomplish what it is that I want. But when a person's in a place of anava and they're able to be bittul to Hashem, then what happens is God starts to tell you what it is that, and you're listening.
I want to accomplish is to do what you want.
Exactly, because now I only wanted to use it, so I have kochot. Okay, Hashem, oh yeah, I could do this for you. I could do that for you. I could do this for you. And because I'm such a, you know
the famous pasuk,
one on my
right?
Tafki. Go ahead.
The famous pasuk, Yaseh kitzoni kitzoncha v'yaser kitzoncha kitzono.
Right.
You make, Hashem says, you make my will like yours, I'll make your will like mine, but it aligns with what you're saying.
It's the same exact idea, because even on another level, right? Because what happens is that the more and more, there's also pasuk like that in Mishlei, something very similar to, I forgot the lashon of it, but that hinges on the same idea of a person nullifying or that which Hashem takes delight in, I'm going to take delight in, and Hashem will give me ultimately my desires in my heart. But why? Because I've delighted in you, Hashem. I made you my delight. And so of course Hashem's no problem giving you the desires of your heart, because your delight is me. So I'm going to give you everything.
I think the pasuk is Asinu ma she'alenu ve'aseh ma she'alecha la'asos.
So this is a Mishlei, right? It's a Mishlei.
I think it's Gemara. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's what I'm talking about is a Mishlei, I think.
But beautiful.
Whatever, find it. So, but this has become the key ingredient, right, to today. This is how Nissim Black is who Nissim Black is today, and all of my ups and downs, I guess, in life have come to this central fact of understanding what my tafkid is and what my purpose is. Right. This is why I try to talk to young other Jewish artists about also too the importance of knowing that everything a person wants to accomplish or achieve in this world is already by Hashem. It's by Hashem. You go to Hashem and you're going to find what you need. Most people, our natural inclination is to go away from Hashem to find what we need. You understand what I'm saying? To find out what it is that we want and what we want to accomplish, right?
You mean through our service to Hashem?
Service to Hashem. Think about it. Case in point, you ask any young kid, whatever, most people ask a kid this intentionally, but they ask them, what are you going to do with your life? What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up, right? What's the real question? The real question is, what are you going to do for Hashem? when you grow up. You understand? What are you gonna do to use your
take what you're good at and to serve
exactly, because that's the whole entire tafka. Everything that here was created for Hashem's kavod, right?
And through that, there's the Shar Bitachon, right? So you're gonna have your panasa.
You're gonna have your panasa.
Everything's
You're gonna
come.
have everything you want. That's all.
What are people doing? They're running away.
They're running away.
From the whole idea.
Exactly, exactly. So it's you know.
Beautiful.
I know.
Wait, so to go back 2 years, I really wanna almost understand, and especially for the audience, what was it like going through this conversion? Obviously, coming into Jewish communities and like it's a lot, you know.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Even for myself, sometimes, you know, you come to like a different neighborhood, you sometimes feel like a little bit of pressure. I'm not from here,
Right.
So for you, even more so, I could imagine, or maybe not, honestly.
Well, it it was definitely different, you know. But like I said, because my initial thing was that I really was I wasn't conscious of that's what I was doing, but I was building a relationship with Hashem that led to me like feeling comfortable to get uncomfortable, basically. You know, I got comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Right.
Going to places where I didn't know anything, I didn't know anybody, just being that sponge to go soak up whatever I could, even if technically it did make me uncomfortable because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know, you know, and we really went for it. It was made easier because I ran into a good friend of ours, Uncle Yaakov, as we call him, Yaakov Lenin, was also black Ger Tzedek, who invited me for Shabbat. So that was the first time I was in the community. It was for Shabbat. I ate by him a couple weeks in a row, which sort of made it lighter for us to feel like we could go in there, and there are black Jews, you know. So that made it a little bit easier for us. And then I think we went for like Simchas Torah. I went to, you know, initially I went actually for Rosh Hashanah, then Yom Kippur, and then Simchas Torah, whatever. So those were the times I went. And it was obviously, you know, Yamim Noraim. So I don't know if it was just a good time to catch everybody working on the Midos or whatever, but it was good for me. And it was nervous, but you know, ultimately you get over it. Once you're in that place with Hashem, you don't mind getting uncomfortable, you know, because you know you're trying to achieve something.
No, obviously Jewish people around the world, they love you.
Right.
But how did it get to that?
But the truth is, they loved me before. Most people look at me now, and I say now just like, you know, get comments on like, oh, of course they love you. You're entertaining them. You're this, you're that, whatever. I get all type of horrible messages online. But the truth is, what most people don't realize, like, you know, everybody wants to ask me how racist everybody is. That's the first thing. Oh, is everybody racist? I had an Uber driver the other day. It's like, I never picked up a black Jew. Are they racist? Like, you know, like, why is that the first question you're asking me, right? Which is probably 2% of what's going on, because that's the narrative. It makes great TV. It's great for everything. Good for news. 2% of my experience, if that even, right? However, on the flip side of that, long before Nissim Black was Nissim Black, the amount of love that I experienced from the Jewish community, there's nothing like that. I never had that in my own community,
wow.
right? Part of it is because we don't know. We don't know how to love. Unreal. I never experienced the love I had in the Jewish community. From the onset, from the beginning, I never experienced chesed, kindness. I was joking about this one time with L'chaim OG, with Z.
Yeah.
And he said to me, you know, at one point he was like suspect to everybody because they were way too nice to him. Never experienced that before. He thought everybody worked for the feds. That was his thing. He said everybody must work for the feds around here. Everybody's asking me questions, you know, Jewish geography. Nobody, if you didn't grow up like Jewish, you have to understand the game of Jewish geography. It's very invasive, right? Who do you know? Do you know this person? Do you know that person? You know that? Coming from a person, you have to understand. From
you really are genuine and like naive.
Yeah,
and nice.
Genuinely being nice and whatever. But from a person like, especially
he came to my shul a couple of times, and it's the same thing. Yeah. Hey, how are you? Come drink.
Like, yeah, what's up? Like,
like stents.
I was a little bit more impressionable than first of all, than he is in certain ways. But it's funny because I could identify also to at some point just feeling like, man, why is everybody so nice to me? I have no idea.
We really are genuine, you know?
Genuinely nice people. That's why, you know, I don't mean to take it there, but where we are on the world stage today. Like, and this is
the first thing I thought when I looked at you, I was like, I love this person. I don't know why, you know?
See, that's a beautiful
every
thing.
Jew, though, honestly.
Right. it's a certain way.
And it's so unfortunate how the media portrays us as to be some
that's
evil,
what I'm saying.
I don't know, horns, you know.
I'm never coming from that place when I've been talking more out now about the war and everything like that.
Yeah.
It's because we got our issues. Everybody's got their issues. However, what I'm saying though is like the general nature of a yid. You know what I'm saying? Even though I'm talking about these execs and different peoples like that in Hollywood and all this and different things like that, like the nature of the people that I know over there, I don't know every person, but the people that I do know, good people, have a love for people, very giving of themselves and towards one another, and the way that I was accepted in the community, like I just know about that love. Nobody seen me, that people didn't even know what I did. Nobody knew I was a rapper or anything like that. So for me, when I see the defamation of character going on right now, because that's really what it is, right? The Jewish people are being portrayed to be one thing, and I'm not saying to cover up. Everybody's got issues, right? Every nation, every people, but if we're talking about the essence of what's going on right now, like in the Middle East, it just doesn't make sense. And I keep saying this to other people, like they have to really start thinking about these things. I'm sorry to pivot off, but I have to go into this. And I've been saying this, and I don't have actual data, right? But data sometimes doesn't matter, especially in the information age as we're in right now, where there's true information and there's false information based upon who paid for the research, right? We're just being honest with ourselves. Like, we don't really know what research is really true.
The data is the Torah.
The data is it, exactly. Amos. So what you have today is that there is what people could say on paper, because you could see crazy statistics today that will make you like shift your whole way of thinking about stuff. Oh wow, because I always thought. Why did you always think? It's because you saw it that way. So either what you saw was true and the data's fake, or the data's real and they're misrepresenting something. But somewhere along the times we have to just be human beings and see what we see, right? And know what we see and go off of what it is that we see. And it's hard to say if a person very ruchni goes off a lot of things I don't see. However, what I'm saying like this: Jews throughout the millennia have been spread all throughout the earth, been many different places, communities all throughout Europe. If we just look at Europe alone, let's look at Europe alone and see and just try to look over the years of the Jewish plight in Europe, right? We're not even getting into North Africa, into the Middle East yet. Let's just talk about this because this is very important for this time and age, how the Jews were in the West. So we know a lot about the pogroms, we know about the Shoah, we know about all of what took place, but we knew about the nature of Yidden. We were downtrodden for the most of the time. At some point, successfully, obviously, Germany was became a different beast. However, what you seen though over there was still acclimating to society. People that were successful, that did leave the shtetl, usually entered into some type of success that led to some type of, betterment to the economic growth of that country, different things of that nature, things of that, which you see by and large of what's happened to the Arab refugees who have left the Arab countries, whatever, regardless of what side, specifically even Palestinians or whatever. Now they're all in these countries, right? The Jewish communities have dwindled greatly in these countries. It's barely, you could go to some places and find whatever. But by and large, you see a lot of Muslims in Europe. A lot of Arab Muslims in there. And you see the behavior. You see what France looks like. We see what's going on in the UK. We see how many of these guys are arrested for conspiracy of terrorism and different things like that, and the protests and the idea of pushing Sharia law over. We see what's happening. We see the behavior. You understand what I'm saying? Like I'm a father, and I love all my kids, right? But I could call my wife. I'm on the road a lot. I call my wife, and sometimes we're on FaceTime. And I see something broken, or I see something happens or whatever. I know what kid did that. You understand? I don't have to be there. You understand what I'm saying? There's a very small chance that it was another kid in an accident, but if there's somebody wrote on the wall or who drew something on it, I know, I have one or two kids that pulled that off. You understand what I'm saying? Because I know the nature of that kid. Because I'm in the house, I see how they behave when they're there. I know what happens if I give that one a marker. Hashem Yirachim, the walls are not protected. You understand? So I'm just using that as an example we see what's happening right now, right? We see what happens when the majority are Arab Muslim refugees, and we see what happened with Jews, right? Over there, when we were there, they killed us, right? You understand what I'm saying? The whole society was a threat to us, right? The Muslim, they've come over, they populated, I'm not saying Muslim, but the Arabs have come there, populated, and there's so much violence and so much everything else going on over there. So then when we take that, we look at these two natures and the behaviors of that, and then we look at the Middle East and we look at what's going on in Israel, I'm going to say, yeah, these Jews are really bullies, they're bad people, they're just like, complete defamation of character. And you think these guys are just good people trying to have peace. And then that's not even a part of the religion, doesn't even believe in that, right?
Read their book, yeah.
Yeah, you read their book, that's not what they're about, you know what I'm saying? At least the hadiths. You can make a case to some places in the Quran that, but you see the overall energy of what's going on over there. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense. So, but that's ultimately what I felt. And so for me, I feel like it's a duty to speak up about this because I know, right? I know what it's like. I knew the aggressive nature of growing up. Even just people in the hood who I knew when I was Muslim and Sunni Muslim, I could tell the difference. I know the difference of what type of nature that created. And I'm not saying every person, because I do know there's definitely some peaceful Muslims and stuff like that, but I'm saying that's not the mahus of what I get. That's not the essence of a general person. For I knew from the hood, when they usually joined, Islam or something like that as a kid, because I did have a couple friends like that. They were aggressive. I had a barber who got arrested he almost committed a terrorist attack. He was a Sunni Muslim guy, used to be a barber of mine. Black guy became in, and he would debate everybody, and he brings this aggressive nature, always having to debate, always wanting to be the
Were you
the
introduced
right
to this when you were a
whatever.
part of the religion?
I was introduced to that, yeah, when I was even a part of religion.
Like the
I saw
violence?
this thing. Yeah, not violence, but aggressively present. We not running around trying to debate anybody about what their religion. This is not our nature, really. You know what I'm saying? People are bringing things to us. You have an obligation at that point to set the record straight. But there's you don't see Jews running around. You'll find by even Christians. You'll find by Muslims running around. You can find all different type of things on this on YouTube. Going to debate. Now, you may find Jews go on talking about Israel or different things like that. But like religion, Islam is always trying to slug up somebody in their religion. That's a part of their faith.
We're not allowed to.
We're not allowed to, and it's not even our nature. Yeah. This is not who we are.
It's pushy and it's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, but what's interesting though is that what constitutes someone to be a Christian or Islam is his belief.
Right.
Like the moment you don't believe, you're not. So
Right.
so like what about? So I once asked someone like, what about the times that you're not believing? Like, let's say you have a bad day. So
Right.
I'm not Islam today. Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting. And then a Jewish person, you're Jewish no matter what.
Right.
Like that alone should be a proof that like hello.
Right. It's true. Very, very true.
What happened with the Motherland Bounce video?
The Motherland Bounce video was more than just the video. It was a song sonically. I did a deal with a company, which was not a Jewish company or whatever, that was supposed to be under the, Sony Music had collapsed one of their labels, Red into Orchard Music. We were supposed to be doing marketing for the company I had signed with. So what happened was I was working with a label, which obviously, on a major scale, want to get the things out. And I had spoken to a few different tzaddikim. I was close to a lot of people at that time. They've been telling me, cast the net out. Why you stuck? Hashem brought you here for a reason. You can reach so many people, And so as I was going through that, I obviously had my own interpretation of how that was supposed to go. I understand the Lashon of my world, where I came from. I can't speak to them in the same way I'm doing Fly Away or Shem Melech. Nobody understands where I'm coming from. So it was sort of like this shift at this point to start making music where it's going to be able to be heard. Obviously not the same content as what everybody else is talking about, but make it in a way that it's available to where other people are also hear. So when I did Motherland Bounce, it was actually Z was with me at one point. Zachariah Chaim Oji at that point was like really on my management team, and so working so at some point I maybe showed him like a demo of that record, that song Motherland Bounce. And I was in the studio one day, and he was there with me in Yerushalayim, and he was like, man, finish the song. We got to do the song. So I ended up doing it. And I didn't think much of the song. I really didn't think, I was like, okay. Me and Yosef, my brother-in-law, produced it. So we ended up doing it. We fly to, New York later on with the label as we start to work on the album. Now, by this time, I already got 14 songs done when I'm supposed to go there to work on the album in New York. But I had already finished most of it. So I get there, and we're having this discussion one day. And we need to pick a record that's going to be the single. Either we need to make a single, a lead single for a record, or we're going to use something you already have. So we're going through the records. Everybody in the studio hears Motherland Bounce and goes crazy. All these guys, right? They're like, that's it. So me and Yosef looking at each other like, that record? Like, they're like, yeah, that's it. So even my project manager at the time, Doc, was like, I don't even know if that's the record, for a different reason. He just didn't feel like, well, okay, it's not that hot. What's going to be, And I was in touch with a good friend of mine, Eitan Ben Horan at Warner. I said, Eitan also too. He was like, yeah, the record's okay, but I don't think it's like, these guys were gun ho on it. So we need to shoot a video. Obviously, it's got the African sample in it, the bubba bubba, she bubba bubba. So I said, let's go to Africa and go shoot it. Label's got no budget for that. So I'm sitting in there, I think. So I'm like, how are we going to do it? What are we going to do? So first thing that comes in my head is Coming to America, Eddie Murphy, right? This is a very famous movie. And so we're going to do everything themed off of that. So the first thing was, finally, Leon takes over, Leon Robinson, who's a very well-known actor and also now director. So he's directing it. So the first few calls are like, okay, yeah, we got to have all this, and we're planning everything, and then we're gonna have the female dancers come in. I'm like, the female dancers? It's like, I said, I can't do that. I can't, it's against my religion. So that's the first argument. So now, I'm vetoing that we can't have female dancers. So I thought in the end everything's going to be great. But this is the first time ever I didn't have any like real creative control. I was basically told what we're doing. Showed up on the set, everything was already ready. They had the full production team and everything like that. And so as long as they didn't have the, girl dancers and all that, whatever, we're good. So we show up, and then by the time we get to the Harlem scene and we got the African dancers, nobody's got shirts on. They all oiled up, you know what I'm saying? Wow. And I'm like, I can't do this. Like, and that was the first thing. So that's the next argument. It's like, I can't go over here and do it. I'm not, And so I'm in this battle. And what was hard about that was that was the moment of me realizing that the more and more you try to go into someone else's world, even to be Makar or whatever, then you're going to sacrifice something. You understand what I mean? Because as much as you're trying to make something available to a world that doesn't understand it in a different way, you're trying to make it speak to their world, you're going to have to sacrifice pieces of yourself if you really want to do it, no matter what, on whatever level, how much creative control, whatever you think you have. So we get into an argument. My brother-in-law pulls me to the side and says, listen, shoot the shot. After this, we'll talk. We know this can't fly. Talk to a Rav, and then we'll go back, whatever. So did that, shot, came back, told them, the other owner of the label was very, very gracious. Said, listen, let's reshoot this scene. So we reshot it again. The guys had on shirts on. They still had the skirts on, but they had shirts on, at least during this time. So this video already is starting to go viral a little bit in social, right? Like, because people were going by, before the video came out, months before it came out, people were already like filming on the streets or whatever. People knew how it was. And so people were like, oh my goodness, what happened to Nissim? This guy just flipped out, like totally whatever. And I think the toughest part for me at that time was that the whole entire time I was tiptoeing because I was also unsure about myself, right? Is this the exact way that I really want to do this? So I was very much so tiptoeing.
What, to represent?
To represent, myself that way, if that was going to be the way that I'm going to, because I understood that this is going to break me out of my day-to-day normal audience of who I had up until that point.
Who you're attracting.
Who I had already attracted to this other audience. But I didn't realize the ramifications until after. So what happens is we release Motherland Bounce. The thing goes viral, right? Instantly goes viral. And there were at this time a few labels that had called me in, like, you know, from Universal, from Sony. I went to Columbia. I went to all these labels, sat in there. The real discussion, you know, I can think of one specifically that was very, very, you know, very heavy for me, was how far can you go? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much further can you go into, you know,
because of
into
the religion?
streets? Yeah, they want to know. One place for sure is like, you know, some guys, they were like, you keep Shabbos? Do you really keep Shabbos? Like, you know, so I already seen that.
Saying they wanted to use your Orthodox image to like further promote their...
No, it's sort of like wanting to know basically how far into the world can I come into. You understand what I'm saying?
That's bad.
Exactly.
That's
and once
bad.
it would have been horrible for me. So I realized that, long story short, I'm starting to come out. I'm having all of these thoughts at this time because I'm starting to receive flack from some people about Motherland Bounce. And at the time, I'm defending myself, but it was hard for me to defend myself because I was 100% behind that move also, right?
Wow.
So I started to think about things like, you know, well, and it's not because the song is black. It's not because of this. It's because it was not reflective of really where I was at in that point in my life. You understand what I mean? It was more so a reach back into the past, you understand what I'm saying, in order to communicate to people, right? But I don't know if it was worth that communication.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you how I felt like it wasn't. What happens is, so song comes out, like I said, it's viral. I'm at this point, I'm trying to defend myself in the song. My wife's trying to defend me. My wife was against it the whole entire time. She was never she was never down for that. And usually I listen to my wife. This one time I did not listen to my wife. So long story short, we end up...
you got paid for it.
Exactly, this you pay for. So we end up, releasing like multiple interviews of me talking about it and different things like that. I end up into somewhat of a, you know, back and forth with the label. I ended up getting out of that contract thanks to my manager, Aaron. And I think we, you know, still today, like, whatever, I'm on good terms with them. It was a rough breakup, but, you know, it's what happened. And so that was going into the beginning of 2020. Corona hits. George Floyd gets killed. There's all a few weeks, whatever after Motherland Bounce. Black Lives Matter goes crazy in the streets.
Crazy, yeah.
Right? And now, to the public perception, because this song was going viral at the same time, it was premiered on BET and whatever, now it looks like I'm Mr. Black Lives Matter. I'm, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is something that I represent.
That's crazy.
And I seen that this whole entire thing, it brought me a whole different type of place where that's not nowhere near where I was going with this. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't the attention that I wanted. So, although it was attention, it was a lot of it, but it sort of brought about, you know, it brought about something that was outside of something which I really desired, you know. That wasn't really what I was going for. And the more and more I was going, I didn't have a clear definition. And I don't mind at all people. My thing is always, I'm going to do always what I feel Hashem wants for me first, more than anything else. So if somebody has a problem with me because I did something that I believe in, but to start receiving any type of backlash from the frum community for things I also didn't believe in, that's when I start to feel like, okay, that's a chaval, you know? But when it's something that I mamish believe in, I don't care, because 1,000%, I'm riding with Hashem on this one, and I know for sure I'm holding the emes. But when you don't know you're holding the emes, those things that eat away at you, you know? It ate away at me because it sort of felt like it put me in a light that I didn't want to be in. I was somewhat received in certain circles that weren't shaykh for me to be in. Didn't really, and then I was excluded from other circles that were much more shaykh for me to be in, right? And this is the toughest part. I always tell, like, young guys, like, who really want to be in that limelight. The toughest thing about being a public figure, and you know, Matis is also an example of this. All of your aliyahs and your readers are in front of everybody. You never have time alone. Every time somebody's watching you. I get so many pictures of myself randomly on the airport, this and that and whatever.
I also do.
People always say, right? Yeah, so you understand this. And when people know you're in the public, so what you have is all your aliyahs and aridas in front of everybody, and there's nowhere to hide. You don't get to just work this out with this shit.
For me, it's
yourself.
inspiring. You know, I was coming back from Miami this couple days ago, and I made a mincha in the airport, and a couple girls were taking a video, and they shared it, saying, "Wow, look, Yiddush Hashem."
Right.
So it could be good too.
Right, it could be good, 1,000%. Everything could be good or bad, depending on how.
I actually relate to what you said when you were saying that when you feel like you're putting out something that Hashem approves, you go all the way. Me specifically on my page, like, if you look through it, you'll see like just truth, taboo topics, everything.
Right.
Like I made a video I think last week about just talking about how parents should be kinder to their kids and things of that nature, and just all these topics, you know. Maybe even sometimes touching topics I shouldn't touch, like tzniut, or when it comes to men, you know, guarding their eyes, things of that nature. I just really believe in it.
Right.
And I think it's so important, and people don't talk about it enough. And what happens is when you have these Jewish content creators or even speakers who are not talking about the important things, it creates this idea that's misleading. It shows like, oh, so in Judaism, you don't really have to be so careful about, you know, where you're looking or how you're speaking about people because it's not politically correct. But in reality, that's not true. I believe, at least for myself, I want to really inform people that we don't construct our identity for ourselves or for Judaism based on what the world is saying. We've constructed on the Gemara, the Torah, you know, Rashi, Tosfot, etc. This is the emet. Torah stems from the word hora'ah, instructions.
Right.
So we need to use these instructions to really navigate our life. And that's what it's all about.
Right.
And like you said, when you have Hashem with you and you really believe in this message, I even send my videos to my rabbi sometimes to check it before I post it. You know, is this too controversial? He's like, no, post it, you know?
Right.
So really, that's what it is. And
that's what it's got to be about.
And I'm sure Hashem understands that those weren't your intentions, and for whatever reason it happened, and if it happened, Hashem willed it to happen.
In retrospect, I always say that when people ask it, like, I always say, I don't like this song. But I'm just saying to say that I don't like what happened to me during that time back to Kufa. It was hard to get my kids into school. I was being like, at that point there were people who were telling me, you know, I'm not Jewish enough. I was getting from certain people because I rapped or because I was black. And then every time I was coming to New York at that time, black people were telling me, oh, you're a traitor, you're not, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you became white, all this other stuff. So I was having like this thing. So I try to like very matter-of-factly set the record straight in that song. Like, I'm black, I'm Jewish, I'm proud, whatever. But it put me in a like I was saying, like in a place to where when I'm saying what I don't like, it's not that I don't like the record, because obviously the record, it was a banger. I'm not going to lie and say the song wasn't a banger. It was a banger. It definitely comes off. When I perform it, sometimes it comes off. But, you know, you look at my body of work, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Hashem all day long, because that's the most important thing to me, and that comes to me naturally. That's my natural state, is that I'm going to make a song about Hashem or inspiration or something, because that's my natural person, right? So
why don't you tell us about your new song? Lead us to that.
The new song, Keep Going, and which is the third single for the new album. I actually had my album was supposed to come back out in November, but because of the war, unfortunately, I pushed it back. It was very hard to release the album. I pushed it back all the way till July 7th is when the album released.
Wow. Because you wanted to give the chizuk?
I not just to want to give the chizuk. I couldn't even imagine trying to push a record when we're in this place of brokenness. Not to say that everything's completely healed, but we kind of come to a place to where we realize that we're in this for a little bit. You know, we understand what's going on. And then it became a place of where it came from, like, how could I release an album like this right now? I just couldn't, even in my heart, I didn't feel right. And then now to a place of where I'm like, I must do this thing right now, you know, so like I have to do it right now. We need chizuk, you know. And so, you know, Keep Going, this newest record that I released, and so I have a video now with a lot of clips of what's been going on in the world in terms of the war. Because I wanted to be able to give chizuk to people, like, and I started to realize that I was able to shape that out a little bit more. People were like, the videos we put out after the war was like, mamish, like life-saving, you know? And I seen that. In the midst of that also too, we did our video together. And so seeing that this is sort of the moment, like, how can I not do that? And I was reminded over and over again, so many people stopped me over this past year and just said, you don't know what your music did for me, or you brought my kid back to Yiddishkeit. This album, I'm telling you, the amount that I got that this year was crazy, to where it was hard for me at one point. I said, okay, I'm gonna put out the record when I have X amount, and I'm doing this, and I start mapping out. You start planning things. So he's making plans. Sometimes planning's good, sometimes it's horrible, depending on what you're doing. Meaning, because my brother-in-law was sitting with me, and he said to me, when I was telling him the things I want to do for the album, okay, I want to create this many pieces of content and all that. And it's L'Shem Shemaim to the degree of the fact that I really want to be able to make maximum impact, right? But what's the problem with that sentence? Is I want, right? And he said that, listen, you can keep holding off on this album whatever you want. To my brother-in-law, Rabbi Yosef Sadiq Mamish, he said, but if it's for you, you could do all those things. But if you're doing this for Hashem, you need to get it out as soon as possible. You know what I mean? And so that's why we're just like, all right, guns out, guns blazing, I'm coming. I didn't do a crazy bunch of promotion or whatever for that, but I just really wanted that people were going to have music that Bezat Hashem is going to give them chizuk. So we released Keep Going, and now the full album is called Glory. That's what it is, and that's what it is, all from Hashem's stuff.
When can they check it out?
It's going to be out July 7th. That's when the new album will be out.
And the single's out, right?
The single's out. Keep Going, Love Me, Scream. Those were the first 3 singles from it. And I think we'll release another single for the day of the release. But yeah, that's when it's coming.
Okay. Is there any other last words you'd like to give to the audience?
I don't know.
Let's try maybe along the lines of, I think a message that needs to be heard a lot nowadays is to have the confidence to do mitzvah. Right. Because the mitzvah, like you said earlier, is such a beautiful thing. I kept thinking about it throughout this interview, just peeling away. And I don't think that's just for coming into a conversion and coming to become a Jew. I think it's for all of us, really just peeling away and coming closer to Hashem, because in such a crazy world with so much going on, that's the only thing we can do.
Right.
You have anything you want to add to that?
So one thing I will always say is that the doing mitzvahs are, regardless of however you feel about them, right? Obviously, once they're a yid, you have an obligation to keep mitzvahs. However, going back to what we said before, once the relationship is solid, then it's easier to do, right? And you don't always have to work on that first, but it needs to be worked on simultaneously. It's very okay to have 2 things at one time. Okay, I have a chiyuv to do something, but at the same time, right, there's a bigger chiyuv that I have that's not recognized as not what mitzvah I'm doing, but whose mitzvahs, whose Torah am I learning, who
Hashem.
Like I said, I say in a line, in a song that my Lifted record I released a couple years ago, that said I did with Levi Robin. I said that sometimes because of the Bilbulim, whatever it was, but I said that I forget who I am, but I don't forget whose I am, right? And if I don't forget whose I am, then I always have a chance, right?
Wow.
There's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be a way back for me to keep mitzvahs and to do and to be involved in avodas Hashem, because I didn't forget whose I am. I may not know all the way who I am right now, but as long as I know the source, I know the shorish, I could get back. And so that's the important part of having a relationship, because you may fall in and out of knowing who you are, right? That's going to change inevitably throughout a person's life, of knowing who I am, because the tircha and the avoda of work, which is limud Torah, his bodidus, being in tzaddik, we don't always get to be in those places. There has to be times where a person has this cutoff moment, whether it comes from shemayim or circumstances, whatever the case is, which is always coming from shemayim, but that there's this time of break where we have to be separated from Hashem, and we don't get to receive such awe and light at that time. And so at those times, B'dafka, I don't really know who I am. But Hashem, as long as I know whose I am, I know I'm with you, then I always have a chance. So the relationship part of it is the most important thing, that a person builds the relationship. I love you dearly with Hashem. Like, you have to have that relationship, which, quite honestly, there could be different darachim, many different form. I took the Hisbodedus because that was the tool that helped me find Yiddishkeit and
was for
find
you.
that it was emet.
Everyone
right?
has what's for them, yeah.
So it was my natural thing that by the time I came in, I land in a place, of course, Breslov Hasidus, where this becomes the ikka of that Hasidus to some degree, is this Hidbodadut, which ultimately is going to work because it's going to cause a person. But literally, let's take out the fancy words, right? Hidbodadut from a regular. Let's just talk about spending time with Hashem. Now, more and more terses.
We always are, by the way.
We're spending time with Hashem, right? But there's a difference between quality and quantity. We're with Hashem all day long. Hashem's with us all day long.
Yeah.
But what's the quality of that time that we're spending with Hashem?
If we
go away from it, this we have to work on all the time.
Just the final word. What do you feel about this verse? And we'll close with that. For a natural born Jew, God is your father. And for a convert, it's a father and mother. How does that make you feel?
Very, okay. I would say it's accurate to some degree. On one madriga, that's one level that's accurate, but I think on the highest level, he's the father and mother for every single one of us. But
meaning, since you leave everything, and
once you leave everything, yes, Hashem becomes that both parents, so to speak, right? And so but there is something about there is a motherly love and nurturing that does happen, I think, by Ger Tzedek, right? That may not happen. So because of the relationship, right? Think about a father. A father usually, in most cases, is a little bit harder on the sons than they are with the daughters, right? I'm a father. I have boys and girls, right? So my wife tells me that the girls boss me around because I do whatever they want, and the boys, I'll send them outside or whatever. I love my boys also too, but the girls, you feel a little bit more like, And so what's interesting about that is I usually say that the Baal Tshuva and the returnee, whatever, to Judaism, and also the frum person who grew up frum and grew up Orthodox and grew up whatever, are usually in one place in this particular instance, and the ger is alone, and that is in the basics, right? Most people ask the basics, like what's the basics of Yiddishkeit? Most of the time they tell you Shabbos, Kashrus, tefillin, them things. What are the basics? Whatever the case is. For the ger, it's just that relationship with Hashem. Ahavas Hashem, like that's the because reason why I say this is the basics, because it was the starting point. That was always the starting point for the ger.
Yeah,
it's because it was from that relationship that only afterwards you find out there's a Judaism. Most people, I don't think, find out first that, like in Judaism, they're interested in Judaism and then they go to Hashem when they're ger tzedek. Usually it's the Hashem thing, because I think the overwhelming majority of people who convert to Judaism were former Christians, right? So to some degree, they already had this relationship with Hashem, although it may not have been clear. They may have to, like we said, strip away some of those layers. But what happens is they have this relationship with Hashem, and only afterwards they start to realize the chashivus, the importance of Shabbat, the importance of all the everything else, because after building a relationship with Hashem, you learn what's important to Him. What happens when a person's a Baal Tshuva, or they grow up frum, but the Baal Tshuva, usually they ended up somewhere, Kivruv rabbi, or Rebbe, whatever the case is, and gets them involved in Torah mitzvahs first, right? First invite them for a Shabbat dinner. Okay, let's everything. They're open enough, light candles, so they start being introduced to ritual Judaism first. You understand?
Beautiful.
And then, as they starting to develop a little bit, then the Hashem part comes in. You understand what I'm saying? But most of the time, the Judaism's way, even if Kiruv isn't usually Hashem first, we start get the people do mitzvahs, right? Say it's right or wrong, I can't say. But what I can say is that everybody has to be Magaya, right? We're coming up on Shavuos now, before actually. Everybody has to be Magaya. Everybody has to get back to that place where we strip away things, not literally, but strip away everything and say, I only have a loving relationship with Hashem. And because I have that relationship and I'm building that, then I'm going to do what Hashem asked me to do. It's much easier at that point.
Beautiful. It's actually Erev Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh Sivan. So Nissim, it was really nice having you.
Like, nice to meet you. Also, nice to see you again, brother. I had to meet you, but it's good to see you again.
I definitely think me and him could talk for hours and hours.
Yeah, and then it's Erev Shabbos.
We're gonna call it a wrap. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, etc. And I'll see you next time.